All right, let's get right into it. For a quarter of a century, 25 years, a weekly newsletter has been showing up in inboxes all over the world, and it's dedicated to one huge topic: presenting evidence for the afterlife. It's called the Friday Afterlife Report, and today we're going to unpack what it's all about. This tagline, which comes straight from the report itself, pretty much nails its mission. You can tell it's not just about listing off facts, it's really about offering a different kind of perspective, maybe even some comfort when it comes to life and, what comes next.
So in this explainer, we're going to look at four main themes that keep popping up in the report. First up, this whole idea of an afterlife that's separate from organized religion. Then we'll get into the personal stories they share as a kind of anecdotal evidence. After that, we'll look at the different psychic phenomena they say are channels to the beyond. And finally, how this all ties into a global community of believers.
Okay, let's start with their core argument, the foundation for everything else. The report really positions itself as a third alternative for people who might be, skeptical of traditional religion, but are still curious about spiritual ideas.
So here's how they frame the whole debate. They argue that a lot of people just completely reject the idea of an afterlife because they link it to what the report calls the absurdities and threats of old-school religions. They say people basically throw the baby out with the bathwater. The alternative they're pushing is this idea of being spiritual but not religious, where you can accept the evidence, as they see it, without having to buy into any dogma.
And to back this up, they often point to science. The report claims that many famous scientists from history who actually looked into paranormal stuff ended up convinced it was real. They also bring up modern quantum physics, suggesting it supports this pretty mind-bending idea that consciousness, not physical matter, is what our universe is actually built on.
Okay, so building on that philosophical foundation, a huge part of the newsletter is all about personal stories, these first-hand accounts of experiences that just don't fit into a purely materialistic view of the world.
I mean, check this out. They share a story about an atheist scientist, Nancy Ryans. After a really bad accident, she reported having a near-death experience, an NDE, where she was absolutely convinced she visited heaven. The report loves stories like this, these transformative events that they say can turn a total skeptic into a believer overnight.
And then you get stories that explore another concept, the earthbound spirit. This one is about a spirit named Harry, who supposedly made contact through a medium way back in 1957. Harry said he never believed in an afterlife, so when he died, he just stayed. Lonely, invisible, and with no idea there was anywhere else to go, until he finally reached out for help.
And the stories get even more wild. The report features this account from a man named Aaron Thomas Green, who says that during his own NDE, he remembered the whole pre-life process. Like, he actually remembers choosing his body and the biggest challenges he was going to face in his life. It introduces this idea that life isn't random, but a kind of planned-out journey for our souls.
So beyond these really personal stories, what other kinds of evidence does the report present? Well, this next part covers the different methods and phenomena that it describes as channels for communicating with the spirit world.
The newsletter is constantly featuring this whole range of psychic phenomena that they present as evidence. We're talking about things like automatic writing, hypnotic past life regression, these shared death experiences that caregivers sometimes report, communication through mediums, and all sorts of other spiritually transformative events.
Let's just zoom in on one of these for a second. Automatic writing. So what is it? Well, the report defines it as when someone produces writing without any conscious control. The way it's described is that the medium's hand is literally being guided, sometimes writing at an incredible speed, and maybe even in a handwriting that's not their own. This is presented as a pretty direct channel for teachings from the other side.
Now, these ideas and all these reported experiences, they're not just being thrown out into the void. The report is also the hub for a really dedicated and active community that's formed around these beliefs, connecting mostly online these days.
First, just think about the dedication here. The report makes a point of saying it's been published every single week for 25 years. That kind of consistency alone tells you there's a super committed group of people behind this, and a loyal audience that's kept it going for decades.
And this community really comes to life in dozens of free weekly Zoom meetings. I mean, the report lists groups for just about anything you can think of in this space, from live mediumship readings and deep dives in the spiritual books to development circles where people can practice skills like automatic writing. It's become this global, interactive network for people who share these beliefs.
The newsletter often ends with an inspirational quote, and this one, from a spirit guide entity they call Silver Birch, seems to just perfectly wrap up its ultimate goal:
to replace fear and what it sees as superstition with knowledge and, as it says here, divine truth.
So, after looking at the claims, the stories, and the community built around the Friday Afterlife Report, it kind of leaves us with this big, fundamental question. Whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or somewhere in the middle, it really forces you to ask yourself, when we're trying to figure out the biggest mysteries of life and death, what do we and what should we actually count as evidence?